Hello guys, in this video we will do the actual coding part and we will start with the TCP server on the Kali machine. So let's get started. So create a new file and let me save this file and let's save it to the desktop and let's call this file as TCP server. Okay, so building a TCP server in Python is quite simple. We will start with importing the socket library, which is responsible on coding low-level network interface. So I will do import socket. Next thing is to create a function called connect. This function is responsible to open a port on Kali side and receive inbound connection from the client. So let's do that really quick. Connect. Okay, now inside this function we define a socket object. And I will name this object as an S. So socket.socket. Okay, the purpose of this object is to create a new socket using socket function. Afterwards, we bind the socket to the IP address and the port number that we want to listen on. And that is gonna happen using the bind function. So s.bind, and then we open parentheses, then we type the IP address, and the IP address of my Kali Linux is 192.168.0.152, and then we pass the port number, and in this case I will just pick up a port number like port 8080. Then we define the backlog size. The backlog size specifies the maximum number of incoming connection in a queue. Now, since I'm expecting only a single connection from a single target, I would set my queue to one session. And to set the backlog size, you need to use the listen function. So I will do s.listen and then pass number 1. Next step is to call the accept function so we can accept inbound connection. The accept function returns two parameters. The first parameter is the connect object and the second parameter is the client IP address and the source port that the client has used to initiate the connection. So I'm going to create two variables here, the connect and ADR, and then call the accept function. So the returned output the returned parameter from the accept function are going to be stored in con variable as well as the address. Finally, we print the following statement so we can see the IP address and the port of the client. So I'm going to just type print and let's say we got a connection from, and close this, and we print out the address. Okay. Next step, we define an infinite loop to get our command input and then send it to the target. So to do that, I will just create while true, and then let's create a variable called command, and then I would use input, and let's create the name as shell. Close the parentheses. So this line here basically means get the user input and then store it in a command variable. If we want for some reason to terminate the connection, we can define an if statement to check the user input. So let's do that really quick. So I'm gonna create here an if statement saying that if terminate was in the command, so if terminate was in the command that we just entered, then we will inform our target that we want to close the session, and to inform the target we need to use the send function. So I would use con.send, and let's agree that the keyword is going to be terminate, so we're going to send the client a terminate keyword, And in Python 3, we need to do encoding, which is basically to translate a Unicode string into a sequence of byte. And to do that, we just need to call the encode function. Encode, close the parentheses here and here. And after that, we need to close the connection from our side. So that's gonna happen using con.close function. So we close the socket from our side. And then finally, we use a break keyword to exit this infinite loop. However, if the command was something else, then we will send it to the target. Because remember, the target is supposed to execute our command and send back the result. So I would add else statement. So if we got something else except terminate, then we're gonna send the command that we have received. So let me just do copy. And again, we need to do encode this. After we send the command, we're gonna read 1 kilobyte of the received data. So I would use print and then con.receive function and then 1024, which is 1 kilobyte of the data. And then I would use decode. And again, to get the data from bytes to Unicode string, then we're gonna need to use the decode function and close these parentheses. And that's it. So we're gonna print 1 kilobyte of the received data. Last step is to define a main function and then call the connect function. So I will just do def main, and inside this function we're gonna just call the connect function and finally call the main function itself. Okay, so let's save this and try to run. Okay, so if I go back to my terminal here and let's do netstat minus ANTP and then grep port 8080, we can see right now that we are listening on port 8080 and waiting for the clients to connect in. In the next lecture, we will code the TCP client and create our first TCP shell. Thank you very much for watching.